The German question after Napoleon, a continent in unfinished balance in the summer of 1866. Central Europe stood at a historic crossroads. War erupted between Prussia and Austria, and with it, the future of the German-speaking lands hung in the balance. To American audiences, this conflict can be understood as Europe's version of a decisive civil-style showdown, one that would determine who had the authority to define national unity. The roots of this struggle stretched back more than half a century to the end of the Napoleonic Wars and the diplomatic reshaping of Europe at the Congress of Vienna. While the victorious powers sought stability, they deliberately avoided creating a single unified German nation-state. Instead, they established the German Confederation, a loose association of independent states under Austrian leadership, designed more to prevent revolution than to inspire unity. For German nationalists, especially in Prussia, this arrangement was deeply unsatisfying. Austria's dominance within the Confederation was resented, not least because the Habsburg Empire ruled over vast, non-German populations. The unresolved German question simmered beneath the surface of European politics. It erupted dramatically during the revolutions of 1848, when liberal and nationalist movements swept across the continent. In the German states, revolutionaries attempted to create a constitutional German nation, debating fiercely whether Austria should be included. Ultimately, the Frankfurt National Assembly chose a small German solution, excluding Austria and offering the imperial crown to the King of Prussia. When King Friedrich Wilhelm IV refused a crown offered from below by commoners, the revolutionary dream collapsed, and conservative forces reasserted control. Although the old confederation survived, the events of 1848 left deep scars. They demonstrated that German unity could not be achieved through idealism alone, at least not under the political realities of the mid-19th century, as the United States had learned through its own violent struggle over union and authority. Unresolved constitutional questions often returned in more destructive forms. By the early 1860s, Prussia, economically dynamic, militarily reforming, and politically assertive, was preparing to answer the German question not with speeches or assemblies, but with power. Bismarck's calculated path to war, diplomacy, deception, and destiny. The decisive figure in this unfolding drama was Otto von Bismarck, Prussia's prime minister from 1862 onward. Bismarck understood that German unity would not come through liberal idealism, but through strategic confrontation. His famous declaration that the great questions of the age would be decided by iron and blood captured a worldview shaped by realpolitik cold calculation rather than moral persuasion. To American viewers familiar with Abraham Lincoln's reluctant but resolute embrace of war to preserve the Union, Bismarck's mindset may seem unsettling, yet historically recognizable. The immediate spark for war lay in the Schleswig-Holstein crisis. These duchies, linked to both Denmark and the German Confederation, became the perfect pressure point. After a joint Austro-Prussian victory over Denmark in 1864, the two powers were left with the problem of governing the conquered territories. Bismarck had no interest in genuine cooperation. Instead, he viewed the shared administration as a temporary arrangement, one that would inevitably break down and justify a showdown with Austria. When tensions escalated, Prussia accused Austria of violating their agreements and deliberately provoked a diplomatic crisis. Behind the scenes, Bismarck worked tirelessly to isolate Austria. He secured a secret alliance with Italy, promising Venetia in exchange for military support. He also skillfully reassured France's Emperor Napoleon III, hinting at possible territorial gains if France remained neutral, promises he had no intention of honoring. Within Germany itself, opposition to war existed among liberals, intellectuals, and even members of the Prussian royal family. Yet Bismarck pressed forward, convinced that history favored boldness. When the German Confederation declared war on Prussia in June 1866, it played directly into his hands, allowing Prussia to claim legal justification while seizing the initiative. Armies of a new age, organization, technology, in the face of modern war. When war broke out, Prussia and Austria fielded massive conscript armies. But their similarities ended there. Prussia's true strength lay not merely in numbers but in organization. Its general staff system under the leadership of Helmuth von Moltke represented a revolution in military planning. Decisions were decentralized, logistics carefully coordinated, and railways used on an unprecedented scale. For Americans, this level of industrialized warfare foreshadowed the mass mobilizations of the 20th century. Technologically, the contrast between the two armies was stark. Prussian infantry were armed with the Dreyse needle rifle, a breech-loading weapon capable of rapid fire from prone positions. Austrian soldiers, by contrast, relied largely on muzzle-loading Lorenz rifles. While not obsolete, they were slower to load and less adaptable to modern tactics. Artillery told a similar story. Austria possessed powerful guns but lacked the speed and flexibility of Prussian breech. These differences did not automatically decide battles, but they shaped how those battles were fought and how deadly they became. Equally important were command philosophies. Austrian leadership remained attached to traditional concepts such as massed bayonet charges, misreading earlier wars and underestimating the killing power of modern firearms. Prussian commanders, though sometimes inexperienced, trusted planning, coordination, and firepower. The result was an army less tested in battle, but better suited to the realities of industrial warfare. As events in Bohemia would soon demonstrate, modernization could outweigh experience. Bohemia in flames. Königgrätz and the decisive turning point. The campaign in Bohemia became the heart of the war. Prussia's strategy, famously summarized as march separately, strike together, aimed to converge multiple armies onto Austrian forces before they could respond effectively. This plan relied on speed, coordination, and the assumption that Austrian command would hesitate. That assumption proved tragically accurate. Austrian commander Ludwig von Benedict, aware of his army's weaknesses, adopted a cautious approach that allowed Prussian forces to gain momentum. The decisive clash came on July 3, 1866, at the Battle of Königgrätz, also known as Sadowa. In miserable weather, more than 400,000 soldiers faced each other in one of the largest battles Europe had ever seen. Early fighting went badly for the Prussians, particularly in dense forests where Austrian artillery and infantry inflicted heavy casualties. For a moment, the outcome hung in the balance. Then, in a dramatic reversal, the Prussian Second Army arrived on the battlefield, striking the Austrian flank and shattering Benedict's defensive line. What followed was a catastrophic defeat for Austria. Tens of thousands were killed, wounded, or captured. The Prussian victory was not merely tactical, it was psychological and political. It demonstrated that Austria could no longer dominate German affairs. To American audiences, Königgrätz can be compared to Gettysburg, a single battle that decisively altered the trajectory of a war and the future of a nation. Beyond Bohemia, Hanover, southern Germany, and Italy's gamble, while Bohemia decided the war's outcome, fighting raged across Central Europe. In the north, Prussian forces crushed the Kingdom of Hanover, despite a surprising Hanoverian battlefield success that ultimately proved futile. In southern Germany, Bavarian and other federal troops resisted bravely but ineffectively, hampered by poor coordination and outdated military systems. Prussian victories along the Main River further dismantled the old German Confederation. Italy's role added an international dimension. Seeking to complete its own national unification, Italy joined Prussia against Austria. Although Italian armies suffered setbacks on land and at sea, Austria's need to defend multiple fronts weakened its overall position. Even where Austria won tactically, it lost strategically. The war revealed a harsh truth of modern geopolitics. Victory depended less on isolated heroism and more on national capacity, alliances, and timing. Peace, power, and the road to German unification. The war ended swiftly. Bismarck, wary of humiliating Austria and provoking future revenge, pushed for a moderate peace. Despite opposition from King Wilhelm I and military leaders eager for a triumphal march into Vienna, Bismarck prevailed. The resulting treaties dissolved the German Confederation, excluded Austria from German politics, and established a Prussian-led North German Confederation. Prussia annexed key territories, dramatically expanding its power. For Austria, defeat forced internal reform, leading to the Austro-Hungarian Compromise of 1867. For Germany, the war laid the foundation for full unification 5 years later. Prussia emerged not just victorious but transformed, politically dominant, militarily supreme, and poised to challenge Europe's balance of power. The Austro-Prussian War of 1866 was short, brutal, and decisive. Like the American Civil War, it proved that national unity in the modern age would be forged not by compromise alone, but by the hard realities of power, sacrifice, and war.